win the series against the Twins, but yet it's another one of those situations where they fail to get the sweep. On the one hand, it was encouraging that some of the bats got going. I think a good reason for that is they played the Twins. Like, let's just be honest, and that's part of it. But I also think that, in particular, Giancarlo Stanton and Miguel Andujar are the two that definitely stand out as important. Stanton, because we know how streaky he is, and when healthy, when he's on, he can be dangerous. And then just Andujar with the situation that he's had where he was, rookie of the year runner-up in 2018, and then he had an injury, and Gio kind of took that third base job, and it's been a tough go for Andujar, but now he's kind of finding his groove, and the Yankees can really use him, and he's really been the Yankees' starting left fielder. So that was good. But Aroldis Chapman, who has been really amazing for the better part of the first few months, blows the last game. So it's not one of those situations where, ugly baseball, bad defense, poor base running. You take the series win, could have been worse, but against the Twins, a team that is not playing very well this year, a team that always loses to the Yankees, I was hoping to record this episode and be in a little bit of higher spirits to have gotten the sweep, but they win 2 out of 3. It's a series win, and so they start off the road trip in a somewhat decent direction. So in game 1, we would have Jordan Montgomery against ex-Yankee Michael Pineda. The lineup at this stage, LeMahieu would continue to bat leadoff, which is no surprise, and he had a pretty good series. Nothing overly spectacular, but good enough. Judge is now batting second. Gleyber's now batting third. Giancarlo Stanton has been cleaning up. Gio's been batting fifth. When Sanchez is in, he bats sixth. And then, the bottom three, I think now we're going to see Andujar bat seventh primarily. And then, actually not necessarily, because they like to split up the lefty-righty. You might get Andujar seventh, Odor seventh, Andujar eighth, Gardner ninth, but you get the gist pretty much. And that's pretty much how it went. But in this one, it got off to a really poor start. And in the first inning, LeMahieu actually gets leadoff double. So I'd been, not thrilled with his play, and he starts off the series with a double, but then not exactly great fundamentals where Judge doesn't get him over, grounds out sharply, and then Gleyber grounds out and Stanton grounds out. So didn't get that run in, and that would be a huge, huge theme of game 1. Game 1, the Yanks would go 2 for 15 with runners in scoring position. They would get the win, but it was not pretty from that angle. I mean, really just ugly. But not getting too far ahead. In the first, with 1 out, Josh Donaldson, who we'll get into Josh Donaldson, he would get a 1-out single. Then Miguel Sano would get a 2-out single. Montgomery was really fighting in that first inning. He was throwing a lot of pitches, struggling, and then with 2 outs, it would be a 2-run double for Ryan Jeffers. So the Twins go up 2-0. And then it would be scoreless for a while. Yankees bats couldn't do a whole lot. Montgomery kind of doing what he needed to do to keep the Yanks in it at that point. Finally, in the 5th, the Yanks would get going, and it would be a 1-out walk, the first walk of the season for Miguel Andujar, who would also walk again later in the series, but good to see. Some patience. Then Brett Gardner, who had a good series, which was good to see. We haven't seen a whole lot good from Brett Gardner. He gets a single. Then LeMahieu hits a single, but it's hit too hardly. So Andujar has to stay at third. Bases loaded, 1 out. Judge walks. And at this point, I'm thinking, all right, well, a lot of our runs come from walks and wild pitches. And what do you know? Next batter, they take Pineda out after that Judge walk. And Jorge Alcala would throw a wild pitch. Brett Gardner scores. So the Yankees tied up at 2. And it's second and third, one out. Labor unfortunately lines out to short, and then Stanton grounds out. So it would stay 2-2 at this juncture. Montgomery pitches a scoreless fifth inning, and then in the sixth, one out single from Gary Sanchez, who has kind of just slowly done all right. He's been all right, Gary Sanchez. Been again, far from the biggest issues. So Alex Colomé would come on and give up a double to Ruben Odor. So you got second and third, one out. And my biggest gripe with Andujar is just the inability to get the big hit with runners in scoring position this year. I kind of outlined that in the last episode. And here he would be lucky that Willens Astudillo would make an error at third. No advance. But what could have been second and third, two outs is instead bases loaded, one out. And Brett Gardner, I'm not sure if it was earlier or it might be later on. He gets a sac fly in this spot. He would eventually, either before or after, also get a sac bunt. So fundamentals from Brett Gardner. Good to see. It was a sac fly to left, and Sanchez would score to make it 3-2. Then in the bottom of the sixth is when things are a little interesting. With two outs and no one on, Montgomery gives up a single to Larnach, lefty. Boone comes out there, and they leave Montgomery in. It's interesting because Montgomery had been upset in his post-game pressers of kind of getting that hook maybe earlier than he would have liked. Well, Boone gave him a chance, and he would then throw a wild pitch, and then Rob Refsnyder, who would get hurt on the play, former Yankee, he would actually, I believe he maybe hurt his hamstring or something to that effect, would get an RBI double. So no win for Montgomery, no quality start for Montgomery. And so and that's just kind of the unfortunate thing. I think he's serviceable. I think he's a kind of middle to back end of the rotation guy, and he, can eat innings for sure, but it's, kind of a typical outing. 5 2/3, 3 runs, kind of had to fight through it. So they then bring in Jonathan Loaisiga, who gets a ground out. They probably, in hindsight, should have brought Loaisiga in to face Refsnyder, but the inning is ended tied at 3. The Yankees would not score in the seventh, as that would be a situation where Gio Urshela, weirdly, as consistent and as good as he is, doesn't have the best numbers with runners in scoring position, which I think would come as a surprise to Yankee fans. He would have first and third, one out, as Torres would single with one out, and then Stanton would single. But Gio would kind of hit a soft pop to second, and then Gary Sanchez would strike out. So it remained tied. Loaisiga pitches a clean seventh, and then the Yankees would take the lead for good in the eighth, as the Twins would bring on left-hander Taylor Rogers, and Rogers would face Clint Frazier as he would pinch hit for Odor. So they want to get the righty in, Clint Frazier, who basically has lost his job to Miguel Andujar at this stage. I mean, Clint will get his starts against lefties, but not against righties at this point. And Clint, to his credit, gets a leadoff single. Then Miguel Andujar follows it up with a single. So you got first and second, and this is where Tyler Wade pinch runs for Clint, which I was surprised it took them that long to do so, because the way it worked out, Wade was going to have to come in anyway. So they waited until it became first and second, no outs. Either way, no harm, no fouls, it turned out. But Gardner would sack bunt here, move the runners over to second and third, one out, and then here's DJ LeMahieu. And LeMahieu kind of gets a little lucky. He doesn't really come through, but what happens is he hits a ground ball to second, and because Tyler Wade's so fast, he's able to beat the throw. And they would rule it a throwing error on Jorge Polanco on that play. I think give LeMahieu the RBI, I believe. But yeah, so again, Wade's speed was the key there. So it becomes 4-3, and then Aaron Judge, trying to remember this play, he reaches on a fielder's choice to second, and Andujar scores. Error by Andrelton Simmons. So yeah, I'm usually good at remembering all of these plays. This one's not ringing quite the bell, but I guess another fielder's choice. Yanks score, and I guess some spotty defense from Minnesota helped in this case. So 5-3 Yanks, and then Labor Torres singles to make it bases loaded, but Giancarlo Stanton hits a double play. So Stanton in this game doesn't really do a whole lot. Well, no. He actually went 2 for 5, so he did. But he really makes his presence felt in the next 2 games. But here, Stanton hits a double play. Chad Green comes on to replace Loizaga, pitches a 1-2-3 innings, so it remains a 5-3 game. And in the ninth, that's when the homers start. Griffin Jacks comes in, gives up a single to Gio, and then Gary Sanchez. It's a 2-run home run. Good for Gary. Then after a Holloway strikeout, Miguel Andujar homers. So gets some insurance, makes it 8-3. And then Wandy Peralta comes in the ninth, gets in a little bit of trouble, gives up a run, not a huge deal. And so the Yankees hold on to win 8-4. So ugly, terrible run as a scoring position, kind of a so-so outing for Montgomery. Good enough. Bullpen does a good job, mainly Loizaga and Green, which would kind of be a theme in the series, and they win the game. Game 2. Garrett Cole, there's been a lot of talk about, especially coming from Josh Donaldson, about this whole spider tack. Look, I'm sure that Garrett Cole probably uses a substance. That's never been a surprise. I don't think he's trying to hide that. It's not like he's necessarily trying to make it seem like he isn't using something, which I think 80 to 90% of pitchers in baseball use a foreign substance. But he has become kind of this poster child, and I understand it. He's the highest paid pitcher in baseball. He's on the Yankees. He's an ace, all of that. So there was a lot of talk going into this game. Well, if Garrett Cole doesn't perform, then clearly, it's because he's not using these sticky substance. He was just fine in this one. He was more than okay. A typically dominant performance from Garrett Cole to kind of silence some of the critics. And it'll be something that probably won't die down, but I think you'd like to think it'll become more of a league-wide situation and not just a Cole situation. And he certainly shut Josh Donaldson down, as Donaldson would end up going 0-for-3 with 2 strikeouts against Cole. So that was great to see. And in this one, it would be against Randy Dobnak, who has been terrible this season. And the matchup kind of went as you'd think it would. Garrett Cole versus Randy Dobnak. This was a bit of a blow. It got a little bit interesting at the very end, but it went pretty well for the Yanks. And it would start out right away as in the first inning, Aaron Judge hits a solo homer, 15th homer of the year, and that would give the Yanks a 1-0 lead. And then in the second, a 2-out rally, 2-out single for Kyle Higashioka, who is just basically at this point the personal catcher for Garrett Cole, nothing more than that. And then Brett Gardner gets an RBI double to the opposite field. And Gardner slowly getting going a little bit here, which is needed. And the Yankees take a 2-0 lead. And then in the third, Judge doubles, Torres walks, and then a monstrous dead center field 3-run shot for Giancarlo Stanton. And that would not be the last of that in this series, or even in this game for that matter. But 3-run homer for Stanton gives the Yanks a 5-0 lead. Jorge Polanco would homer off a Cole at the bottom of the third, cut it to 5-1, and nothing would happen in the fourth. And in the fifth, another home run for Stanton after a Torres walk. So a 2-run homer for Stanton, 5 RBIs. Yanks take a 7-1 lead. Then with 2 outs in the inning, Miguel Andujar back on the home run board, as that would make it 8-1. So that would be it for Randy Dobnak. He got absolutely smoked. And then Miguel Sano would homer off a Cole in the bottom of the fifth to make it 8-2. Cole ends up going 6 innings, no walks, 9 strikeouts, and just those 2 solo homers. So, an excellent outing against an offense that he should do well against, but still, under the circumstances, really excellent. So in the top of the 7th, 1-out single for Urshela, then a double for Odor, and then Andujar gets a sac fly. So that makes it 9-2. And Luis Cessa comes on for the 7th and 8th, pitches 2 scoreless innings, and that would actually prove to be important. And again, Cessa is underutilized in this pen, but I get it. It's a deep bullpen, and this is the role he has. In the 9th, bottom of the 9th is when things get kind of interesting. In a 9-2 game, Brooks Kriske, who I wouldn't expect to last a whole lot longer on this Yankee roster, he's still on the roster. But there'd be a 1-out triple by Alex Kroloff, then an RBI single by Miguel Sano. That would make it 9-3. Then a ground out, so 2 outs and a runner on. Celestino gets a single. Then it's a wild pitch by Kriske, which scores Sano. Then it's a 2-run homer by Jorge Polanco to make it 9-6, which would get Chapman up in the pen, which I guess is kind of a segue, an eventual segue into the next game, but not too much. Luckily, Josh Donaldson flies out, so Krisky finishes it off, but gives up 4 runs in the process, and the Yankees hold on to win it 9-6. So they're going for the sweep in Game 3, and I mean, the Yankees had it. They really did, and this one stings. It does, and it's not one of those overarching bad Yankee losses, but it's a rare fuck up from Aroldis Chapman, plain and simple. So the Yankees again, it's against, this one would be Michael King against another former Yank, Jay Happ. So King, who, he did okay. Look, he did all right. It wasn't pretty, but honestly, my expectations for him aren't super high, so it could have been worse. Gave them somewhat okay length, considering the fact that they had a fresh bullpen. So everything, they kind of did what they needed to, but, not a great outing for King. We'll see when he starts next. But the Yankees would get going in the first inning. 1-out single for Judge, then Torres would single, and then 3-run homer, dead center field for Giancarlo Stanton. That's just what he does when he's on. He is a fun player to watch when he's healthy and in the zone. So 3-0 Yanks. Then Gio Urshela would get a triple. Unfortunately, they would not score this run. Gary Sanchez would strike out. A bad job by Gary not getting that run in. And then there would be a wild pitch. Jay Happ throws a wild pitch, and Gio dashes for home. And originally he was called safe, but Happ does a very nice job of kind of blocking the plate and tagging Urshela out. This would actually eventually prove to be a pretty costly non-run for the Yanks. So it stays at 3-0. No run for Gio there. And King, not a great first inning. 1-out walk to Donaldson. Kirilloff gets a single, so first and third, and then Nelson Cruz gets a sac fly. And it could have been worse that inning, honestly. He got hit very hard, but it would stay 3-1. In the second, he settles down. In the third, gets into a little bit of trouble, but comes out unscathed. Then in the top of the fourth, Gio Urshela hits a home run off a Happ. Gives the Yanks a 4-1 lead. Unfortunately, in the fourth for Chris Gittens. So you'd get a 1-out single by Andujar. Chris Gittens hits a foul home run. Originally called a home run opposite field down the right field line, but it was foul. And so Chris Gittens he went from getting his first career home run to still being hitless. In I think he's about 0 for 12 in his young MLB career. That was a bummer because, again, they could have used that as it turned out. And so the game would stay at 4-1. Bottom of the fourth, Sano leadoff single, then a bunt, unsuccessful bunt that gets Sano over to second. Andrelton Simmons gets an RBI double, then Celestino grounds out, but that would be all for King. So it's 4-2. They bring in Lucas Licky, who hits Jorge Polanco, but then gets Josh Donaldson to strike out looking. We head to the fifth where, LeMahieu singles, Judge lines out, Torres reaches on an error by Simmons, then Stanton flies out, and then Gio lines out. I felt like the Yankees could have scored a lot more, and it wasn't really so much their fault. A lot of bad luck in this one. They really hit the ball hard off of Happ. And Happ ended up going 5 innings, giving up 4 runs. It could have, that is pretty fortunate. The box score looks a lot better than what was for Jay Happ. And then in the bottom of the fifth, Licky runs into a little bit of trouble, as with 1 out. Cruz reaches on a catcher's interference by Gary Sanchez. Not a great job by Sanchez. He does that from time to time. And then Larnack singles. So Licky's out of the game, and Jonathan Loaisiga, who has been just a consistent piece in this pen and has maybe been the most underrated guy in the bullpen all year. Loaisiga gets the final 2 outs of that fifth. Then in the sixth, the Yankees add another off of Tyler Duffy. Leadoff single Sanchez. Then an infield single for Andujar. Chris Gittens then grounds out. And luckily, Donaldson didn't go for the double play. Sanchez would kind of deke him a bit as the lead runner, and so it worked out for the Yanks. Then Clint Frazier lines out to right, and then DJ LeMahieu comes through with a big RBI single up the middle. This is what we saw from DJ his first 2 years as a Yankee. Just simple, up the middle single, gives the Yankees a 5-2 lead, which was really important at the time. Loaizaga pitches a good sixth inning. So we head eventually to the bottom of the seventh. Wandy Peralta comes in, and Peralta, this is not someone that once Zach Britton returns, which should be soon, Peralta's role is going to diminish. I'm hoping even to the point where maybe Licky is ahead of Peralta on that lefty depth chart. But either way, Peralta gives up a one-out single to Nick Gordon. Then there's a wild pitch, and then an RBI double by Nelson Cruz. And he would then get Larnach to ground out, but he leaves the game having given up that run, 5-3. And then Chad Green strikes out Miguel Sano. Chad Green would also pitch the eighth and gets the job done, although a really nice play by Andujar to end the inning, where Wade would come in for defense to replace Gittins. So LeMahieu moves over to first, Wade plays second, and Celestino singles with 2 outs and tries to get a double, but Andujar, a really nice throw, and Wade, a really nice tag, and they get the out. So a nice job there. So it is 5-3. Yankees don't score on the top of the ninth, and then Aroldis Chapman simply gets beat the fuck up in the bottom of the ninth. He falls behind Polanco 3-1. He didn't have that fastball. I mean, it was like mid-90s, maybe topped at about 96, whereas sometimes he can, get it in the triple digits. Leadoff single Polanco, and then on a 1-0, Josh Donaldson, who hadn't been heard from all series after that Cole talk, kind of gets the laugh. The Cole versus Donaldson was the key, but Donaldson gets a huge game-tying 2-run homer. And you're thinking, all right, this isn't good, but hopefully Chapman can settle down here and he can get it to extras. Was not meant to be, as Astudillo on the first pitch singles, and then Nelson Cruz on the first pitch hits a bomb 2-run homer. It is a single, a homer, a single, a homer off Chapman, and the Yankees lose 7-5. So a really tough way to end this series, but overall positive signs. But it's the Twins, so I remain skeptical about what's to come. And what is to come next is a rare, no game on Friday, 2-game set at Philly. It'll be Jameson Taillon versus Vince Velasquez. Honestly, that could go either way. And then it'll be Domingo Germán versus Aaron Nola. That could go either way. So this series, it's simple. I mean, you want to win both, but I could easily, if I had to predict it, I think this is a split. I'm seeing split here. I don't know which ones, but I say they go 1-1. But I'll be, 2-0 will be great, because then that'll improve you to 4-1 heading into a big series at Buffalo against Toronto to finish off the road trip. So we'll see what happens. Again, Yankees fail to get the sweep, but they do win the series against the Twins.